So good morning, everybody. It's my pleasure to introduce Kevin Shufflebotham, RDN's board chair and the president and CEO of Medicine Hat College.
Thank you, Deanne, and welcome everybody to Rural Development Network's 14th annual general meeting. I apologize for my radio voice. I think I have a bit of a cold coming on, but I'm still super excited to be here. Today, we're excited to share achievements and present to you the progress RDN has made over the past year. And I would just like to congratulate Deanne and her team for a strong year. Despite the many challenges faced by COVID, the organization has grown exponentially. I would also like to take this opportunity to thank the RDN executive, Nancy Broadbent, Brandy Lee, Dina McMartin, Ed Pajor, and Gilbert Perez, as well as our advisory board, Kevin Van Lagen, Kimberly Worthington, Leslie Warren, Mark Boychuk, Mike Leithwood, Mitchell Rhodes, and Nancy Green. Thank you for all you do to contribute to RDN. At this time, I would like to invite all our guests to share in the chat box where you're joining us from. And if you've shared the meeting link with anyone not registered, please also share their name in that chat box so we can allow them to join the event. And with that, I will turn things over back to our CEO, Deanne Bernard. Thank you everyone for joining and have a great day.
Thank you, Kevin. I am joining you from our head office in Amiskwatsi, Waskagan, otherwise known as Beaver Hills House or Edmonton, located on Treaty 6 territory and within the Métis Nation of Region 4. We would like to thank our hosts, the Cree, Saulteaux, Niitsitapi, Blackfoot, Métis, and Nakota Sioux, as it is their traditional land that we stand upon today. Our RDN team spans across Turtle Island. We invite everyone to take a moment to reflect on their own acknowledgement and relationship with the Indigenous peoples' land who are joining us from today. RDN acknowledges that we are all treaty people, with all the responsibilities to the relationships that come along with that. We devote our time to strengthening allyship with Indigenous peoples through our municipal, provincial, and federal rural projects. We acknowledge the historical oppression of culture, lands, and First Peoples in what we now know as Canada. RDN is committed to and believes we can contribute to the healing and decolonizing journey for young Indigenous leaders to help heal their communities. With that, I am pleased to welcome everyone to our annual general meeting. I know that the RDN staff and board members are as excited as I am to share with you what we accomplished between April 1st, 2021 and March 31st, 2022. And to give you a sneak peek at the year ahead, which is already in progress. The first part of the meeting will feature the RDN staff discussing our accomplishments, along with opportunities for you to ask questions. We will then take a break and launch into the formal business meeting. Of course, everyone is welcome to stay for that meeting as well. As many of you know, we began our journey in 2009 as the Alberta Rural Development Network, and we rebranded to the RDN in late 2020. While we have stayed true to our mission and vision, we look a lot different than we used to. We have a lot of highlights to cover, so I'll launch right in. We will periodically stop and address questions. So in the meantime, please feel free to put any questions in the chat box or hold your questions and you can ask them at the right times. At the beginning of the last fiscal year, which was less than 18 months ago, RDN had approximately 16 full-time and 5 part-time staff pictured here. By the end of the last fiscal year, on March 31st, 2022, we had grown to about 37 staff. This slide shows many, but not all, of RDN's current staff as we continue our unprecedented growth. We wouldn't be here where we are without our members: Athabasca University, Medicine Hat College, Portage College, the University of Calgary, and the University of Lethbridge. And without our funders, we could not accomplish the work we do. RDN receives no core funding, So we owe our project funders a debt of gratitude for the faith they put in us to help them accomplish their goals. Of course, RDN doesn't work in isolation. This past year saw the creation of several exciting new partnerships and the continuation of several existing ones. Together, we have accomplished great things, some of which you will hear about today. One of the biggest highlights of the past year, which you'll hear more about later, was the impact of COVID on our Reaching Home program, which is funded by the Government of Canada. The program expansion that was started in the previous fiscal year continued. So for comparison, at the beginning of 2020, Reaching Home funding was less than $1 million annually. So this represents enormous growth. But it hasn't been all work. Last year, RDN participated in the BCNPHA Staff Appreciation Video Challenge. The purpose of this challenge was to highlight our amazing coworkers across the organization and showcase the great work that each team does in rural communities across the country. We competed against a variety of other nonprofit organizations, and we took home the top prize. We were able to use that prize money for a staff appreciation event in person with games, food, and fun. So we're just going to play that quickly for you right now.
The Rural Development Network is a nonprofit organization with a vision to create a sustainable network that empowers rural communities through expertise, information, and services. We run a variety of initiatives that respond to current needs and priorities, including our Sustainable Housing Initiative, which helps communities looking to develop affordable housing and help access funding. They've even published a step-by-step guide to help implement plans from start to finish. We are looking forward to 2022 to continue to expand all across Canada. Normally, our office is buzzing with energy, but for now we make good use of tech to stay connected, never missing a beat with each other. Not only have we been able to thrive during a global pandemic, we've actually grown significantly over the past year, from 15 staff to 23, spanning 4 provinces. Of course, under direction of our morale officers. We are extremely proud that we've continued to support rural communities and work together as a passionate and dedicated team. Thank you for taking the time to view our submission, and the best of luck to all participants.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun and a lot of work for our staff to put together, so that was great. Over the past year, RDN's key initiatives have grown from our housing, immigration, homelessness, estimations, agri-food, and coalitions to now include health and wellness, shelter policies, Indigenous engagement, transportation, work-integrated learning, and rural revitalization. And now I'm pleased to turn things over to Asad Bhatti, our Director of Housing.
Thank you so much, Deanne. Hello, everybody. I hope everyone is having a good morning today. My name is Asad Bhatti. I'm the Director of Housing, and I lead the Sustainable Housing Initiative at the RDN, the SHI. So today we're going to be talking a little bit about what the SHI is, the work that we do, and some of the projects that we've worked on in this past year. So the Sustainable Housing Initiative was started back in 2015, and it was when we had launched an EOI in Alberta, and we're learning that a lot of rural communities were having a lot of challenges when it came to developing affordable housing. They were saying that they couldn't do this alone. They didn't know what the steps were. They knew that they needed affordable housing, but didn't know how to get it developed. They thought that it was impossible to actually develop affordable housing because of the lack of funding available from both provincial, federal, and funding through other agencies. So this made it very clear for us that we had to start an initiative, start a program to help these communities navigate through the process and get them the funding that they require to develop affordable housing and address the need that exists in their communities. So then in 2015, the SHI was born. So the SHI was born with the thought of redefining how people think, feel about, and create affordable housing. We wanted to support communities in their efforts to build affordable housing, and we wanted to ensure that the housing that they create is financially sustainable. This was really important for us because a lot of the projects that existed around that time, we were seeing them run into challenges because of financial sustainability. They were losing operating funding, or policies were changing, and they were no longer financially feasible. So we made it our mandate to ensure that the projects that we work on, the projects that we help fund, are those which are financially sustainable, so projects don't have to worry about policy changes or about funding running out, once you get the project up and running, it's sustainable for the period of its life cycle. We wanted to create a model for developing affordable housing so that we could help and guide people across the country and then make it very clear how you should go about developing affordable housing. We wanted to, as I said before, redefine how people felt about affordable housing and look at ways of reducing stigma and NIMBYism in different communities. And of course, as mentioned, we wanted to create financially sustainable projects to ensure the longevity and the impact of these affordable housing projects remains in the community where they're being built. So the way that SHI works is that we're filling a major gap that we see in the industry. So there are housing operators or the proponents who are the development lead. They're working with CMHC, the Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation, or different funding agencies, and they're basically their client. Sometimes they have limited experience and limited capacity to actually execute the project. So they might not know how to acquire funding, or they might not know how the construction process works, or a combination of those things. So SHI fills that gap by providing the capacity and experience to the housing operator. And primarily, we fill the gap by helping those groups access funding through CMHC, through the local, provincial, or territorial government, or through other funding agencies as well. Of course, that connects them to the various funding agencies. As you can see on the top left there, this introduces the NHS to them, the National Housing Strategy, which is a huge funder of affordable housing projects across Canada. And then, of course, at the end, once you have the funding in place, you work with developers and contractors to actually execute the project and see those units being built. Our end goal is to develop the affordable housing required to house every single individual in Canada by 2030. This is in line with the National Housing Strategy from the federal government, the NHS. And of course, while it's a lofty goal, it can only be achieved by collaboration and by working tirelessly on getting these units built and getting these communities served. So to talk about a little bit more about SHI, the work that we do, and some of our team members, I'm going to pass it on to Trevor Horn.
Thank you, Asid. As you can see, we've worked all across the country in the past fiscal year. At the beginning of the fiscal year, we had projects in BC, Alberta, and Ontario. We saw growth in BC, continued to start new projects and complete projects in Alberta and Ontario. But most excitingly, we got new projects in Newfoundland, in Nunavut, in the Northwest Territories. And we've continued to build relationships in the Yukon, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, and throughout the Maritimes as we continue to look for new projects. And of course, we try to work in Quebec, but there's some challenges there. Throughout the past fiscal year, our team consisted of Zain Abedin, the Director of Community Development. He has since moved on, so Asid Bhatti has stepped up as the Director of Housing. I am the Manager of Community Development. Daniel Morin was our Project Manager for Planning and Community Development. Azam Katek, our Research and Programs Analyst. And we've had a lot of growth in our team, including Jesse Jepkema, Planning and Research Analyst, Nicole Cronkite, our another Planning and Research Analyst, Kabir Shahani, our Finance and Research Analyst, and of course, Courtney Nguyen, our Planning Intern. And I will pass it on to Kabir to share a bit more about our work.
Thank you, Trevor. In 2019, we created a step-by-step guide to help communities across Canada develop affordable housing. It received a Gold Roof Award for its research impact in the affordable housing space. It includes detailed information on the entire affordable housing development process, from the preliminary funding objectives to the operation and maintenance of the built residence. And it's available for free on our website, housingredefined.ca. Next slide, please. So while the SHI has written a holistic guide that brings the different facets of the affordable housing sector together, our expertise lie in the initiation phase of a housing project. Our team provides pre-development cost recovery consulting services, creates affordable housing strategies with the future in mind, seeks out funding sources to realize your project's vision, and assists in its consultation and plan development processes. Of course, A lot has changed since 2019. In 2021, we decided to create a new iteration of the guide to address these sector-wide changes. We assembled a national advisory committee made up of experts in all aspects of housing in Canada, whether it be knowledge of planning, construction, energy efficiency, operations, or maintenance. To this date, the National Advisory Committee has helped us improve our reach while ensuring that we don't stray too far away from the guide's purpose, which is to disseminate knowledge from housing sector experts to groups that want to build affordable housing to service local housing shortages through filling industry gaps, which are seldom addressed. Through funding provided by the Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation, we are expected to finalize the new iteration of the guide by 2022 end of year. Our scope has been defined, and we are in the process of accessing further funding to begin work alongside New Commons development. I will now pass it over to my colleague, Jesse Chipkama.
Thank you, Kabir. The past year has seen us working with communities and organizations throughout Canada, stretching from coast to coast to coast. This includes Home Base Yellowknife, the affordable housing of St. John's, Newfoundland, the town of Claresholm, Alberta, the Lillooet Friendship Society in BC, the Fort Vermilion and Ayers Seniors and Elders Lodge Board in Alberta, Terracotta Housing Co-op in Ontario, the Smoky Lake region in Alberta, and Iqaluit in the Nunavut. And an excellent example of our work is our pre-development project for the Taber and District Housing Foundation, which will eventually include 32 mixed market units, which will house approximately 36 people in 21 affordable rental units and 11 market units. Up next, we have Nicole.
Thanks, Jesse. So SHI is working to support diverse, sustainable, and equitable housing development in Albertan communities through our Enabling Housing Choice project. This project was made possible through funding and support from the Alberta Real Estate Foundation. Our project aims to understand what barriers communities are having to provide a diverse range of housing options across Alberta, do research to better understand how to tackle these issues, and to understand the factors that impact housing development and perceptions of living in various types of communities throughout Alberta. Partner with municipalities across the province who are struggling with housing affordability, diversity, and choice, and work with them to implement this research and find tangible ways to improve their community's housing. And finally, to take the lessons learned from the research, best practices, and work with the partner communities and compile these into a guidebook to enabling housing choice to help other municipalities in their housing journey. The project is funded over a 3-year period. Our first phase began with research to understand barriers and potential solutions to improving housing diversity. I'll expand more on the research we completed in this fiscal year in the next slide, but this phase is really about defining issues, opportunities, and potential improvements to the planning field for housing, which leads into phase 2, where we'll be partnering with municipalities across Alberta to help them implement policy changes and engagement strategies to help address their unique housing needs. Then in phase 3, we'll be compiling the lessons learned into the guidebook to help other municipalities make positive changes in their communities. And then the final phase will be knowledge sharing, where we'll share the new resource through workshops and info sessions, as well as presenting at planning conferences to share with municipalities, planners, and developers. So this fiscal year saw the completion of phase 1, and I wanted to highlight some of the research we completed by the end of March. So we compiled an extensive literature review and scan of best practices when it comes to housing policy, development barriers, and explored potential solutions like red tape reduction and form-based zoning. We interviewed 19 subject matter experts that included planners, municipalities, including CAOs and councillors, academics, real estate and economic development experts, as well as housing developers themselves. We also conducted a province-wide survey that aimed to find out what Albertans loved about their communities, why they chose to live where they live, and what types of housing they think is needed in their community. We wrapped up phase 1 by publishing 5 preliminary finding reports to capture the overarching themes that emerged from our research and their intersection and influence on housing choice. This initial research is key to moving into the implementation phase, as it provides the foundation of policy changes and other strategic improvements we'll be recommending to our partner communities. Each of these partnerships provides us with the opportunity to not only improve their housing situation, but to also gather critical data and insight on effective implementation methods, barriers faced, and lessons learned for the development of the guidebook. So I'll hand it back over now to Asid.
Thank you so much, Nicole. And the last thing we'll be talking about here today for the SHI is the Affordably Project. So this is a project that was just starting out as of the March of last year. And what it is about a program that we're going to help disseminate across Canada, which will really help streamline the due diligence needed for any affordable housing project, in that it'll be a lot easier to narrow down the site that you should be developing affordable housing on. It makes it clear what sort of amenities are nearby to different sites, what sort of zoning regulations you might have to be dealing with, what sort of permits you might have to be dealing with, and a lot of different information like that. It makes it really clear between two different sites which one would be more key and more prime for an affordable housing project in terms of making sure it has the best impact for the tenants who are eventually going to be living there, as well as the easiest one to develop and actually see units being built on. The project is being funded by the CMHC Housing Challenge, the data stream in particular, and we're working with our partner Map Your Property on this to see this great program be disseminated across Canada and be accessible to every nonprofit and municipality for free that would be able to make benefit of it. Okay, perfect. And just getting into the end of it, I wanted to ask if anybody had any questions that we could answer about the SHI. I know we're pretty dry, so don't blame you people. Okay, so I see one in the chat from Jubilee. Were there any partnerships regarding transit or transportation? So not particularly within the SHI, at least not one that had a lot of impact. However, we are going to be touching on this, I believe, a little bit briefly later on in the presentation. So stay tuned. I think there is some related to that. And like you're saying, Anjali, absolutely, it is vital to successful housing. And this is something we are exploring. So I think it's going to be talked about a little bit more later in our presentation. Okay, I think that if there aren't any other questions, I will let everything else move on. So I'm going to pass it off to Sydney to talk about Reaching Home and the great work that her team is doing.
Thanks, Assad. I just see Holly's hand raised. I'm not sure. Holly, did you have a question?
Yeah, sorry, everyone. So we just got a last minute question that came in here, which was great for Assad and the team. So it would be, when will the site selection tool be available?
Oh, that's a perfect question. So the site selection tool, what we're currently doing is doing all the setup and the preliminary work required to get that tool, affordably.ca, available across different municipalities in Canada. We're working first in Toronto and then Edmonton and so on and so forth. So it'll be available in different regions at different times. If you connect with us, you can connect with me at, I'll leave my email in the chat so you can connect with me. You can also connect with the project manager for the Affordably Project, Janice. I'll leave her email in the chat as well. You can connect with us and we can tell you when the tool will be available in different municipalities, because it's kind of like a rollout across the country at different times. So great question. The answer is unfortunately not too concrete, but if you reach out to us, we can help you out with that.
Perfect, thanks, Assad. And one more is, how will the new 2.0 version be broadcast nationally?
Perfect, thanks. Another great question. So the SHI Guide 2.0, we're currently working on doing some of the final touches for that and making sure that it has all the information that we want to see available in the updated guide. Once it's all complete, we're going to be releasing it through our website, newsletters, a press release, and through all of our partners as well. And we're expecting that to come sometime in November. So if you're subscribed to our newsletter, you won't be able to miss it. We'll make sure that it gets out to you. Awesome. And I think with that, I will now pass it on to Sydney to talk about the great work her team is doing.
Thank you, Assad. So hello, everyone. My name is Sydney, and I have been managing the Reaching Home program at RDN now for the past couple of years. And I would just like to first start off and acknowledge the Reaching Home team for all of their hard work supporting our projects and making sure funding gets out the door as quickly as possible. I've had the pleasure of working and learning from some incredible women over the years, including Linda, Robin, Jolene, Tammy, and Maude. And I would just like to thank them for their invaluable contributions on the team. So overall, this past year marked the conclusion of the third year of the Reaching Home program, which is the federal government's homelessness strategy aimed at reducing and preventing homelessness across Canada. The third year of the program was one of the biggest and most successful years thus far. Typically, RDN distributes just under $1 million annually in funding to support 16 rural communities in responding to homelessness in Alberta. And the majority of these projects are multi-year projects that initiated in 2019 and will be completed in March of 2024. However, as Deanne mentioned, this past year, RDN was grateful to receive an additional $1.8 million in funding from the federal government to distribute to rural, remote, and Indigenous communities in Alberta. And this incremental funding really sustained the additional Reaching Home funding, the Reaching Home COVID-19 funding that was provided throughout the pandemic in 2020 and 2021. So an open call for proposals was launched back in September of 2021, and an additional 27 projects were awarded funding. All of these 43 projects are shown here on this map, and we were really excited that 7 projects were Indigenous-led, and these are reflected by the orange pins located on the map. And 14 of these projects were committed to specifically addressing Indigenous homelessness. Through Reaching Home, we are able to fund non-for-profits, municipalities, FCSS, and Indigenous communities, including First Nations and Métis settlements. And I think it's important to note that approximately 40% of Alberta's population live outside of the 7 major cities. And while our organization receives just under $1 million annually to distribute to communities located outside of the 7 cities, the 7 cities receive over $20 million alone in Reaching Home-based funding, and this does not include the millions of dollars from the province that are prioritized for the 7 cities. So there exists a significant gap in both federal and provincial funding available for rural, remote, and Indigenous communities located outside of the major urban centers. So we strongly believe that increased funding, specifically directed at rural communities, is needed to sufficiently respond to homelessness across the province. Now we want to spend some time highlighting and celebrating the achievements of a number of projects that this funding supported over the last year. Foothills Detox Center is for people battling addictions who are waiting to access inpatient treatment. In this past year, 128 individuals participated in the Transition Beds program, and 101 of these clients successfully exited the program and went on to access either treatment, sober living, or found appropriate and suitable housing, which is absolutely fantastic. In addition, YWCA Banff's Emergency and Transitional Housing Program in the Bow Valley provided 735 emergency bed nights and 537 transitional bed nights to over 100 individuals. One of our newer short-term projects, a non-rural youth association, worked with 83 youth across central Alberta in just 6 months, and 15 of these youth were identified as high risk. And this project traveled to youth and met them where they were at to provide youth who were at risk of experiencing homelessness with psychological first aid and basic needs. Another project, Changing Horses Non-for-Profit Society, which is an Indigenous-led organization, broke ground on a Blood Tribes supportive housing project that is expected to serve over 400 members. And Reaching Home funding specifically supported 13 transitional beds. And we are really excited that this project is expecting to begin housing people later this fall. And lastly, you may have heard about a new and innovative way of providing emergency shelter to folks experiencing homelessness through the construction of shelter pods, which first started in Edson and has since resulted in a similar project in Drayton Valley. And these pods have been really driven by community and municipal support and proven to be a successful response to providing emergency shelter in rural communities where there are such limited resources and funding to begin with. And really, these projects are ultimately saving lives. Now, as mentioned earlier, additional pandemic-related response funding was provided through Reaching Home. So in total, in the last couple of years, $2.6 million was invested into 53 projects across rural communities in Alberta. And these projects have since wrapped in September of 2021. And funding supported a range of needs, including increasing organizational capacity through funding staffing who connect clients with various services, including housing, income assistance, employment, and mental health and addictions. Funding also supported the development of MAP programs, basic needs, mental health supports, and homelessness prevention. And funding due to COVID-19 also led to longer-term capital investments. And this included the purchasing of a vehicle and renovations to develop a pet-friendly facility in rural-based women's shelters, the renovating and construction of transitional and permanent supportive housing in First Nation communities and Métis settlements, and the creation of 2 transitional housing units to support women and children fleeing domestic violence in St. Albert. So overall, we are really grateful for the sustained growth of the Reaching Home program this past year. And we were thrilled to learn that the federal government is committing additional funding to the program for the next 2 years. It's been really exciting to be a part of a team that supports community-based solutions and innovative projects. And we are really eager to continue working with our community and government partners and our regional advisory board to develop responses to combat homelessness in rural, remote, and Indigenous communities in Alberta. So with that being said, it is now my pleasure to pass things along to Diane, who's going to speak a little bit more about some of our other homelessness projects and cross-initiative collaboration.
Thanks, Sydney. My name is Diane, and I'm the program manager for Integrated Solutions and for the National Coordinated Access Program for across Canada. RDN's vision is a strong, sustainable network that empowers rural communities by providing or facilitating access to trusted rural development expertise, information, and services. This is reflected in the cross-initiative collaboration that we see throughout RDN. Reaching Home, Estimations, and Health and Wellness have worked on the following projects together this past year. In response to community requests and Reaching Home funding, we facilitated a Pan-Canada research project that resulted in the step-by-step guide to developing emergency MAP programs. The purpose of the guide is to provide communities with direction, insights, and best practices for starting and maintaining temporary emergency shelters, provide service providers with a tool to support a deeper understanding of homelessness, and a tool to use for community engagement, and to provide policymakers with a tool to inform and guide decision-making. Thanks to funding from Reaching Home, we were able to lead the Slave Lake Reconciliation Project and lead community conversations around Indigenous homelessness in Lac La Biche and area. Our teams have led difficult community conversations while walking alongside communities to develop responses to homelessness. We facilitated focus groups in Whitecourt around homelessness and who is homeless in the community. We also celebrated the great work that Eagle's Nest is providing in the community, as they are providing transitional housing along with basic needs to the most at risk in their community. The town of Sylvan Lake contracted RDN through Reaching Home funding to seek out a proactive response to homelessness through the development of a Housing First model. What is Housing First? It is recognizing that housing is a human right to which all are entitled. It is an approach about systems and service providers working together. It is about meeting the client where they are at with no expectations, just to house them and then collectively support them through their journey. Working alongside the town of Sylvan Lake staff and community partners, we developed a Housing First framework for the town of Sylvan Lake that is valued, sustainable, which has been adapted to meet the needs of the community. RDN was awarded a grant from the Government of Alberta to develop a framework that will strengthen and build rural, remote, and Indigenous communities' capacity to respond to homelessness. Many rural communities are challenged with an understanding and responding to the growing complexity of all of the homelessness population. The challenges are complicated, ever-changing, and unique to each community. There is a need for solutions to be multifaceted, flexible, and results-based to ensure that the needs of our most vulnerable residents are met and to inform new initiatives that address housing and homelessness. Using a strength-based and trauma-informed lens to gather and collaborate new and existing community information, the outcomes will allow for stronger community capacity and local autonomy in developing responses to homelessness. In the fall 2021, RDN partnered with a team of graduate students at the University of Alberta's School of Public Health to explore coordinated access in rural and remote communities. This project's outcomes included a literature review to understand the strengths and challenges of implementing coordinated access in rural and remote and Indigenous communities, and a service mapping project that drew on direct engagement with the service providers in Lac La Biche County. One of the graduate students, Rachel Stefanik, continued to build off the outcomes of this project and completed a practicum placement with RDN in winter 2022. The aim of this project is to better understand the strengths and challenges of implementing coordinated service delivery in rural communities to address homelessness and begin initial conversation with service providers in rural Alberta. Rachel developed a survey tool and interview guide and hosted engagement sessions with service providers, including Reaching Home projects in Alberta. A final report on key findings was created and will be shared with community partners this year. In May 2022, RDN was awarded a contribution agreement from the Government of Canada, Reaching Home, Canada's Homelessness Strategy, Community Capacity and Innovation Stream, to build an adaptable coordinated access system model that can be scaled nationally and be adjusted for community and organizational capacity. I'm now going to pass it on to Robin.
Thanks, Diane. Hi, everyone. My name is Robin Kyler, and I am the Program Coordinator for Homelessness Initiatives at RDN. I will be sharing with you some information around our collaborative networks, as well as the Canadian Rural and Remote Housing and Homelessness Symposium. At RDN, we coordinate housing and homeless networks that include a provincial network known as ARCH2, the Alberta Rural Coalition on Housing and Homelessness, and a national network known as CAR, the Canadian Association on Rural and Remote Housing and Homelessness. Network members include frontline service providers and housing providers, community-based organizations, and people who are passionate about housing and homelessness, as well as persons with lived experience. Within these networks, we identify common issues, share solutions, and create a collective voice to address a variety of needs, helping to share best practices by providing a forum for discussion with others who understand the realities of rural homelessness, while also taking time to celebrate each other's successes in community. Together, we also contribute to the improvement of data collection so that issues surrounding housing and homelessness can be better understood and addressed. Another network we facilitate is the Canadian Rural Collaborative, or CRC. The purpose of this network is to initiate partnerships, information sharing, and to help build capacity between organizations working to address economic development and social issues in a rural context. This group is open to any organization working to support the sustainability of rural and remote communities, including addressing social issues, economic development, and revitalization. Finally, the Canadian Rural and Remote Housing and Homelessness Symposium is a national event dedicated to discussing the unique challenges of rural communities, which was a topic previously lacking in other urban-focused housing and homelessness conferences. The symposium was held on June 1st to the 3rd of 2021 and had 410 registrants. We received very positive feedback during and after the event, and we will be exploring a hybrid event for the next symposium in 2023. If you are interested in joining one of our networks, please contact us at info@ruraldevelopment.ca. Thank you, and I will now pass things over to Emma.
Thanks, Robin. Hi, everyone. My name is Emma Wallace, and I'm calling in from the unceded Anishinaabe-Algonquin territory. And I'm really excited to share a little bit more about the homelessness estimations projects we have going on here at RDN. But first, I want to introduce you to our team. The 2021 estimations team includes Linda, Scott, Justin, and myself. Now, I actually want to take a step back and talk a little bit about the estimations. So rural homelessness often looks different than urban homelessness. It's hidden. It's really hard to see. So the national standard for measuring homelessness is the point in time, or PIT count. And that's when an organization or a municipality gathers volunteers to walk around the community for a 24-hour period, asking anyone they encounter on the street to fill out a survey. But because of its hidden nature and the lack of resources in communities, rural homelessness can often be really difficult to measure. As a result, we developed the step-by-step guide to estimating rural homelessness to support rural, remote, and Indigenous communities to measure homelessness in their area. Since its launch in 2017, more than 50 communities have successfully used the guide to better understand what homelessness looks like in their area. Now, I quickly want to walk everyone through the process of actually collecting data within the community. So we use what's called a service-based population estimation approach. That's just like a really big way or a big name to say that we collect data with service agencies over a defined period of time, usually 30 days. And this methodology really benefits rural communities because it isn't reliant on volunteer time, it doesn't require walking across large geographic areas, and it provides a more holistic view of homelessness in the community. So the purpose of an estimation is threefold. First, to provide a comprehensive picture of housing instability, homelessness, and service needs in the rural community, to inform policies, practices, and funding decisions on housing, homelessness, and support services. And then third, and probably most important, to elevate and incorporate the voices of folks who are experiencing homelessness in the solutions to end homelessness. And communities have had tremendous success in measuring homelessness through this methodology. What we've found is that homelessness estimations are often foundational in rural, remote, and Indigenous communities. They're usually the first step towards building solutions to address homelessness. So now focusing on the past year. Over the past year, we've really worked on expanding our estimations to allow for customization. And what this means is that customization could look like keeping all of the questions on our standard survey, but maybe adding a question around transitional housing. Or maybe it's looking like encouraging community members to fill out the survey online because of COVID or other contextual factors. Or it could even look like translating the survey into a more commonly used language in that community. So after fleshing out this process, we conducted 4 customized estimations over the past year. Across these 4 communities, we identified 458 people experiencing housing instability. And the top 5 reasons for housing instability in these communities were the inability to pay rent or mortgage, low wages, increasing rent prices, domestic or family violence, and mental health and illness concerns. We're now working on expanding our customized estimations even further with projects in Métis Nation Region 1, Edson, and Strathcona Regional District. We're also planning for a fall 2022 provincial estimate with 25 to 30 rural, remote, and Indigenous communities across Alberta. So we've learned a lot throughout 2020, 2021, and we plan on using those learnings to continue adjusting and improving the estimations guide and the process so that we can continue to better support rural, remote, and Indigenous communities across the country to address issues of housing and homelessness. Now, I think I'll pass it back to Sydney to get us started with some questions.
Yes, if anyone has any questions about our various homelessness initiatives, whether that be reaching home or how you might get involved with some of our networks or our homelessness estimations or some of our more community-based projects, feel free to pop your questions in the chat or raise your hand. I know that was a lot of content to digest. It looks like we have a question specifically about the shelter pods. Can you talk a little bit more about the shelter pods? Yeah, certainly. And if you have any specific questions, I can definitely put my email in the chat and you're welcome to follow up with our team after today. But essentially, as I mentioned, the shelter pods was kind of a concept that originated out of Edson. They received a lot of community and municipal support for the project. And essentially what they did was they had they had access to some recycling depot, essentially rooms that they renovated into emergency shelter pods. And so really these pods are providing basic needs services and emergency shelter to clients who might be experiencing homelessness in the community. And really where the idea of the shelter pods came from was that it's very expensive to operate, a traditional shelter or even a MAP program. And so these shelter pods are really self-sustaining. Of course, there are some operational and maintenance costs associated with the pods, but for the most part, they really are self-sustaining. And so clients, there's essentially like a dial pad that clients can call a number, and then whether it be a volunteer or a staff member can give the client access to the pod for the night. And so it works obviously a little bit differently in each community, but that's kind of the premise of the pods. But yeah, really the idea emerged in order to because, like I said, so many rural communities, there's such limited resources and funding to begin with. And so how can we respond to homelessness in a community that isn't too expensive? And so that's where the idea of the pods came from. Like I said, happy to answer any more questions if you have any.
Yeah, Sydney, and I think you may have touched on this there in your answer, because we have some great questions kind of coming through the chat here. And so the second one from where we're talking about shelter pods, are more people willing to use them than traditional shelters? Do you want to expand on that anymore? Because I think you kind of covered it there.
Yeah, maybe the only other thing that I would just add is what we've been hearing from clients are very reluctant to want to go into the urban centers or cities to access shelters. And so they really want to stay in their home community where there are those social support networks. And so, we've certainly seen, based on the two projects that we funded thus far in Edson and Drayton Valley, clients have been accessing the pods. I believe in Edson, actually, there's been talk about increasing the number of pods available because they're full every single night. So the uptake in terms of clients and usage has been quite high.
Excellent. So the next question would be, Janet says that she is interested to discuss a women's economic development project, battling a deadline, wondering who would be the best person at RDN to contact. So I wonder if that's homelessness and Shelter Pulse, or what are your thoughts on that, Sydney?
Yeah, I think with economic development, I'm wondering if rural revitalization, the Rural Revitalization Initiative might be a good place to start. And I know, I believe Deanna is going to be speaking about that a little bit later in the presentation. And so, does anybody want to jump in here? But that was the first thing that kind of came to mind. There's lots of people who would be wanting to chat with you, though, that's for sure.
Absolutely. Okay, so Janet, we'll keep that one in mind as you hear the rural revitalization. I'll keep you noted on the side here, and just let me know if you have any more questions on that. And then absolutely, we will find the best person for you to connect with on your interests. Next question for you, Sydney. During COVID, has there been more migration to cities from First Nations and Métis settlements?
Yeah, that's a great question, David. So what we've been hearing specifically from our projects that received COVID funding was that it was actually the opposite that was occurring. A lot of First Nations were returning to their home communities, to isolate. And then of course there are many issues associated with overcrowding in Indigenous communities. And so what we've been hearing is actually quite the opposite, is a lot of people have been returning to their home communities in order to be with family, and again be closer to their social networks and supports. I'm not sure. I'm sure there might be data in other provinces and communities maybe suggesting otherwise, but that's what we've been seeing and hearing from a lot of projects we've been working with.
Excellent. And it looks like Deanne was able to answer our last question in the chat. So I think we are good to go. Thank you so much, Sydney.
Thanks, Holly.
Hi, everyone. As the Director of Health and Wellness and Indigenous Engagement, I'm happy to highlight the projects our team is involved with. Previously, Diane spoke of the cross-initiative collaboration, and Emma spoke about the estimations. As we go to the next slide, you will see the diversity of our team and why we're involved in so many projects. Community safety and well-being is really the essence of this team. The diversity of our growing team builds a strong foundation to inform and develop responses to social issues that empower communities to become more resilient. Strong collaboration, flexibility, and heart is what makes the building blocks of our team. Last fiscal year included the following team members: Cassandra, Diane, Emma, Mary, Emile, Aaron, and Mika, and Justin. And I'm happy to share, as of today, we're a team of 14 and we continue to grow. 2021 was not only a continued year of pivot and growth for our team, but it allowed for the expansion for new initiatives. We are happy to share that we are leading initiatives that will break down barriers, engage non-traditional partners, and allow for the decolonization of data collection. 2021 really saw the Clarity on Cannabis project come to life. The project moves away from a just say no approach to one that raises awareness on cannabis, the potential risks and harms, as well as providing alternative coping tools and strategies for youth who choose to use cannabis. Clarity on Cannabis offers a guide as a tool for educators, parents, and guardians to increase their knowledge on cannabis to better prepare themselves for questions around it. In addition, the guide provides context, sample lesson plans, and some questions with answers for common questions. KID is a volunteer-based telephone wellness check-in program that connects with seniors that have been identified or self-identified as being lonely or isolated. Volunteer Lethbridge partnered with RDN to expand the KIT program in other interested rural communities. The expansion successfully onboarded 5 additional rural communities. RDN is committed in our learning journey of reconciliation and Indigenous engagement. It's intentional and is guided by elders and knowledge keepers. We are building a strong foundation that will inform our work based on the TRC 94 calls to action and the United Nations Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. In response, RDN hired our very first Indigenous liaison in 2021, who is guiding us on our learning journey. In July of 2020, RDN was awarded a contribution agreement with CMHC for the development of a decolonization Indigenous data collection. The purpose of this project is to develop a decolonization data collection tool to support the planning and implementation of additional affordable housing and community development projects on First Nation communities, ultimately reducing Indigenous homelessness. This Indigenous-led project is undertaken in partnership with Indigenous communities and service providers and is elder blessed and will be informed by the 12 dimensions of Indigenous homelessness. As Indigenous communities move along the path to self-determination, additional capacity and resource supports are needed to address housing and homelessness data gaps to establish effective housing provision strategies. This work will ultimately support Indigenous communities to understand their unique community needs and create more healthy, sustainable housing and support services for their members. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen. And now I'm going to turn it over to Mary.
Thanks, Linda. Hi, everyone. My name is Mary Mcguire, and I'm a project manager with the Health and Wellness team. I wanted to first touch on the You Know Me campaign to end ageism in Olds, Alberta, a project I've been overseeing. RDN has worked closely with Olds Alberta and their age-friendly communities action plan. So based upon the data collected for that action plan, the Olds Age-Friendly Committee identified ageism as an issue in their community. In 2021, Olds Age-Friendly Committee and RDN were awarded funding from the Government of Canada's New Horizons for Seniors program to create an ageism awareness campaign reflecting the diversity in the community of Olds. So the purpose of that campaign is to support social participation and the inclusion of older adults in Olds, Alberta by promoting volunteerism and engaging them in an anti-ageism awareness campaign. Also, the purpose of the campaign was to engage local businesses in taking a pledge to commit to anti-ageist policies and creating a more inclusionary environment for older adults. By engaging with older adults in Olds, Alberta, we were able to capture their stories to be shared in a poster format within the community and in newsletter ads on social media and also on the You Know Me website. And through that website, local business owners are encouraged to take the pledge to challenge ageism in their place of business. And once they take the pledge, they receive an information package on ways they could challenge ageism through actions and through policy change. Another project I've been overseeing is the Awareness Builds Connection in Dementia Friendly Communities project, also known as the ABCD project. And this past fiscal year, the ABCD project team was made up of Cassandra, project manager, myself, also a project manager, and Aaron and Amika, the evaluation and project assistants. The overall purpose of the ABCD project is to support rural Albertan communities in becoming dementia inclusive by sharing evidence-based initiatives adaptable to rural settings. And we would be providing that seed funding to support the development and implementation of those initiatives, and of course, assisting communities in engagement and in the evaluation piece. This project is funded by the Public Health Agency of Canada through their Dementia Strategic Fund. In 2020, the Public Health Agency of Canada announced an invitation to submit applications to receive funding for projects related to dementia awareness raising initiatives. They're really looking to target the prevention or delay of onset of dementia, reducing the stigma surrounding dementia, and of course, encouraging communities to become more dementia inclusive. So this is the overarching timeline of ABCD's project deliverables. We started off with the research into dementia inclusive initiatives, and of course the community engagement into the recruitment of our wonderful advisory committee who has supported us all along the way. We then developed a catalog based upon the research, choosing dementia inclusive initiatives most adaptable to rural settings. Then through an expression of interest, we have since chosen 5 rural communities to engage in the pilot project. So those 5 communities involved in the ABCD initiative are Drumheller, who are implementing a memory cafe, Spirit River, who are implementing a Java music memory cafe. Strathmore is overseeing a speaker series and a train the trainer session geared towards dementia awareness for businesses. And Sturgeon County is also doing a speaker series and a human library. And of course, Tabor is doing a memory cafe. I want to thank everyone so much for listening and hanging out with us. And I'm now going to pass it off to Haley to talk about Shelter Pulse.
Hi, thanks, Mary. Hello, everyone, and thank you for taking the time to listen to a project I'm extremely passionate about. My name is Haley, and I'm the current project manager. Shelter Pulse is a project born out of community need for increased policy capacity with a specific focus on trauma-informed and feminist lenses. A partnership was formed between RDN and Mountain Rose Women's Shelter Association, funded by Women and Gender Equality Canada through the Feminist Response and Recovery Fund, to develop a centralized online database of feminist, trauma-informed policies for rural women's shelters across Canada. So for the fiscal year 2021-22, the Shelter Pulse team consisted of Julia, who is the project manager, and myself as the coordinator. So why do we need this project? So violence is the leading cause of women's homelessness in Canada, and there's no standardized or coordinated policy for violence against women's shelters in Canada to navigate how to support women, gender diverse, and children fleeing violence. Some rural shelters operate with one staff on at a time, and some have not gotten an increase in funding since the 90s. Policy work is time consuming and is often left up to only the executive director, as there are such few staff and they're working on focusing on servicing the shelter seekers, which in turn leads to shelter seekers not being the focus of care all the time. And there is potentially so much harm that can be done to someone seeking shelter. So it is imperative all policies are rooted in trauma-informed policies. The shift needs to be taken nationally, as shelter seekers are an increasingly transient community, which means different policies in different provinces can re-traumatize folks in their path to healing. Shelter Pulse would not exist without our valued shelter partners from across Canada. The many rural and remote women's shelters involved have provided expertise, experience, and feedback throughout the project. As you can see here, we have partners from all across Canada. So I wanted to show our theory of change for our project that was developed by our evaluation consultants to demonstrate the potential longer-term outcomes of Shelter Pulse. So if we can decrease administrative effort required to update shelter policies, then at the end of all the work that we're doing, the goal is to be able to improve health equity for women escaping violence. So here you can see the different phases of our project. So project setup was really laying the groundwork for the why behind the project, and our main deliverables that came out of that were our literature review and our environmental scan. Phase 2 was our policy needs assessment, where we held engagement sessions with our shelter partners, and our main deliverable from this was a what we heard report. We're currently in the largest phase of the project, which is developing our website and the policies for the policy database, which our website will host. We are doing capacity building with our shelter partners to build the capacity and confidence around some of the content for our policies. And the final phase is testing the database and seeking feedback on the policies and website from our shelter partners. Thank you, and I will turn it back to Linda for any questions for the health and wellness team.
Thanks, Haley. We're happy to respond to any questions anyone has at this time. We would just really encourage anybody after listening to all the presentations, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us, and there will be some contact information at the end of the presentations or in the chat to be able to reach out to RDN with any questions, or if you want to get involved with the project. And with that, I will hand it over to Elnaz.
Thank you, Linda. Hi, everyone. I'm Elnaz Alias. And through the next couple of minutes, we're going to talk about the Rural Immigration Initiative, the initiative that I'm the program manager for it. So this past year, the Rural Immigration Initiative further expanded its work to support settlement and integration in rural communities. As a result, our team grew to 4 full-time staff. So we have a skilled and collaborative team, including Jade Roche, who planted the seed for Rural Immigration Initiative back in 2020. Sohela Humayed, project manager, and Elaine Flores, research and evaluations coordinator. So the overarching goal of this initiative is increasing rural communities' capacity to support the settlement and integration of immigrants and refugees while developing more welcoming communities and workplaces. The initiative aims to take a holistic approach to support a wide range of stakeholders, including community-based organizations, service providers, and individuals. Our current projects focus on various areas such as developing a new model of community development that rural communities can use to create and implement effective plans, developing and delivering trainings for service providers to better understand the immigrant population and their needs, supporting rural communities and post-secondary education with strategic planning on attraction and retention of immigrants and international students, and also raising overall awareness on the community needs and immigrant perspectives. So currently, we are also expanding our work to support the refugees and equip and educate employers in rural communities on hiring and retention of the immigrant workforce. I'd also like to mention that we have also established partnerships in Saskatchewan and Ontario. We believe that we have solidified ourselves as the expert in sector and strive to develop further partnerships with businesses, service providers, and other nonprofit organizations to help both communities and immigrants. Now I would pass it to my colleague Sohaila to talk about some of the projects under this initiative.
Thank you so much, Elnaz. So as mentioned, my name is Sohaila and I'm a project manager with the immigration team. The Strengthening Community Capacity to Support Newcomers project is funded by the Government of Alberta's Settlement, Language, and Integration programs under the Community Capacity Stream. This is an 18-month project done in partnership with Assist Community Services Center, and it aims to build the capacity of service providers in rural communities for the successful attraction, retention, and settlement of newcomers in Alberta. The project works with the communities of Hinton, Meahill County, Sylvan Lake, and Wainwright, and focuses on a few main objectives. The first is to build the local capacity of service provider organizations through capacity building training. The second is to create a toolkit that will further support the training and be available to communities across the province to continue with the sustainability and the impacts of the project. The last objective is to establish partnerships between rural communities and between communities and immigrant serving agencies to create pathways for collaboration and learning. Once the project is complete, which is actually at the end of this month, we will be offering the training for redelivery and to be able to support more rural communities across the province of Alberta. This year, we have also expanded to provide more fee-for-service work. With the launch of the Rural Renewal and Rural Entrepreneurship immigration streams, we found that many communities hoping to apply to these streams needed support to fulfill their newcomer attraction and retention goals. So our team has begun working with rural communities by assessing the different supports that they need and offering services such as customized training opportunities for service provider organizations, municipalities, community groups, and local employers. The trainings we offer are individualized and range from topics such as anti-discrimination, intercultural competency training, and understanding the settlement needs of newcomers. Lastly, the immigration team has furthered our community development by providing community engagement opportunities, community-wide needs assessments, and action plans to support municipalities with their economic and workforce goals. I will now pass it over to Elaine, who will discuss more of our fee-for-service work.
Thanks, Sohaila. My name is Elaine Flores. Hello, good morning, everyone. I am one of the research and evaluations coordinator of the immigration team. So Portage College retained the services of RDN's rural immigration team to create an international student strategy for their first year, which is this present academic year. The project took place over 6 months. It started off with research on international students in terms of the national and provincial context, and a review of best practices that rural colleges have taken to attract and retain international students. We put the research on an environmental scan report. The next phase of the project was engagement, and this involved interviews with college staff, current international students, and a representative from its international recruitment partner and other rural colleges in Canada. We also did engagement sessions with the college's International Student Strategic Planning Committee and with organizations in Lac La Biche, St. Paul, and Cold Lake, the 3 communities where Portage has campuses that are expected to receive more international students this year. We wrote a gap analysis report that summarized the findings from those interviews and engagement sessions. The information we gathered will be used to support the development of the international student strategy for this fall 2022 admissions. The document is meant to be built upon and was presented in such a way that the Portage College can future expand on this for their multi-year strategy. RDN is a partner in 2 projects being funded by the WES Mariam Asefa Fund, which is the philanthropic arm of the World Education Services. The first one is a project titled Being Proactive in Rural Canada, Creating Mechanisms for Inclusive Workplaces that Support Employers and Employees. This is a 2-year project led by the Center for Civic Religious Literacy, or CCRL. Other project partners are Religious Freedom and Business Foundation and the Temiskaming Shores and Area Chamber of Commerce in Temiskaming Shores City, Ontario. The objective of the project is to support employers, immigrants, and refugees in the Temiskaming Shores and Area region to engage with diversity through an intersectional religious literacy lens. And we hope to do this by establishing faith-related employee resource groups and faith-friendly workplace certification for rural employers. We are currently speaking with employers and employees in the local area to ensure this is a locally relevant program. We will form 2 advisory groups. One is composed of local employers and the other is composed of employees. This will help us, or they will help us, in project design and development. And the next WES funded project is what we call the Inner Hands Project. This is also a 2-year project led by the BC Co-op Association. Other partners on this are the Alberta Community and Cooperative Association and the Women's Economic Council. This is a free cooperative entrepreneurship program for newcomers. It is designed to support newcomers in both urban and rural communities in Alberta and BC through all the stages of starting and growing cooperative businesses. There will be business financing available through the BC Co-op. We also have community champions working with us. They are helping translate resource materials in other languages spoken by most of the participants, like Arabic, Ukrainian, and Spanish. There are 4 courses and programs for participants to take. There's the Foundations, which is an introductory course explaining topics such as the histories of cooperation and co-op business models. The second is Development, a co-op incubation course designed to take participants co-op from idea through incorporation. The third is Startup. It's a course providing essential tools, information, and support to see participants co-ops through its first 3 months. And the last is Success. It will involve networking, professional development, and mentorship for long-term cooperative success. And now I will pass it back to Elnas to speak about other projects.
Thank you, Elaine. So, rural immigration continued its work with Hinton on the Welcome to Hinton, Rural Immigration and Community Inclusivity Project, funded by the Government of Alberta's Multiculturalism, Indigenous, and Inclusion Grant Program. The team conducted qualitative community-based research on barriers that immigrants in Hinton experience to full social participation through interviews and focus groups. We then delivered anti-discrimination training to service providers to support inclusion in their community through a train-the-trainer method. The completion of the project saw an increased awareness of service providers on newcomer needs and further supported community knowledge on anti-discrimination and anti-racism. Under a different project, actually a pilot project to promote social and economic well-being through Religious Literacy, which was funded by the Catherine Donnelly Foundation and a partnership with CCRL. The project aimed to improve the social and economic well-being of rural communities by fostering an understanding of religious, spiritual, and non-religious identities. We worked in partnership with Islamic Families and Social Services Association in Edmonton, Alberta, and the Keepers of the Circle Indigenous Hub in Timiskaming Shores, Ontario. To achieve our goal, we engaged with key informants in Timiskaming Shores, Kirkland Lake, and Lac La Biche to conduct in-depth interviews with various stakeholders and community members. In September 2021, we hosted a sharing circle with elders and Indigenous youth and delivered 2 in-person dialogues in Ontario, one in Timiskaming Shores and one in Kirkland Lake. In November and December 2021, we hosted a 3-part series of online training sessions in Lac La Biche. Each training focused on the concerns raised from the interviews alongside the initial environmental scan. Upon completion of this project, we have continued to engage with partners for the second phase of the work. Now I will pass it to Daniela to talk about the Work Integrated Learning Initiative.
Thanks, Elnaz. Hi, everyone. My name is Daniela Seiferling, and I'm here to talk to you about our Work Integrated Learning Initiative. So in partnership with the Business and Higher Education Roundtable, RBC Future Launch, and post-secondary institutions, we launched Rural Roots to raise awareness of work integrated learning, or WIL, and build capacity for rural and remote employers by matching them with student talent across Canada. I would like to thank Haley, my project coordinator, for their invaluable work and ongoing support to make this project possible over the last year. The program has 3 primary priorities. The first being to raise awareness of WIL and its benefits. The second, to match small and medium enterprises with undergraduate students. And the third, which is creating enabling infrastructure to support experiential learning across Canada. To achieve these priorities, we set lofty goals for our first year, including matching 750 students, engaging 2,000 employers in passive and active communications, and hosting a year-end showcase to celebrate successes from the first year and generate interest in a long-term initiative. At the time of launch, this was a 1-year pilot program. We signed the official agreement in October 2021 and began matching employers with work integrated learning opportunities for the fall and winter semesters. In November, the Business and Higher Education Roundtable issued a formal press release detailing their partnerships for the program year, and RDN also issued a press release formally launching the program and beginning the partnerships. Over the next few months, we focused on matching employers with opportunities for winter, spring, and summer semesters, while also planning the year-end showcase. Our final project wrap-up and final report are slated for August 2022. By March 31st, we were more than halfway to our goal for the number of placements facilitated. We matched 693 students with projects across Canada. 97 of these students were from equity-deserving groups, primarily Indigenous and international students. These students completed 300 projects for small and medium enterprises and represented colleges, polytechnics, and universities from 5 different provinces. Our second objective was outreach, which involved passive and active communications. Active communications included tactics like cold calls, presentations, webinars, emails, and focus groups. And passive communications included tactics like newsletters, press releases, social media, and landing pages like the one you see on the RDN website. By March 31st, we reached over 2,000 organizations through passive communications and had directly engaged with over 500 small and medium enterprises in more than 500 communities across Canada. Our final objective is hosting a project showcase to highlight our successes from year 1. At the time of the annual report, we were planning the agenda that would include guest impact speakers sharing their experiences with Rural Roots and with work integrated learning as a way to generate interest for year 2. We also plan on experimenting with paid advertising to help boost attendance and generate interest from future employers and students. For those of you who are interested in seeing what we have accomplished since March 31st, you can watch the showcase recording in our Will resources on the RDN website. And if you're interested in signing up for a placement or hosting a student, please visit our initiative page or email me directly. I will drop those links in the chat for everyone shortly. And I'll now pass things back to Elnas to speak about the Rural Transportation Initiative.
Thank you, Daniela. And RDN had also a project focused on rural transportation, which was a partnership with all over Alberta and funded by AREF. So the project was not about proposing a solid idea that can solve the transportation issue in Alberta. It was a project based on qualitative research and facilitating connections. So what we focused on this project was to revitalize and reconnect stakeholders in Alberta, leverage significant rural transportation research, actions, and outcomes, and identify a range of ideas, connect the silos of people, and report and disseminate those findings. Overall, we sought to better understand the transportation and challenges faced by communities in rural setting, and to consider how rural service providers might address those needs in timely and appropriate ways. So to do so, you see a timeline on the next slide, where our timeline is like heavily focused on information gathering through qualitative research methods. And if we can go to the next slide, it would be great. Our phases are included lots of engagements, doing interviews, focus group to facilitate those connections, and also collect that information that we are looking for on the challenges and barriers for transportation. As I mentioned, it was not an outcome-based project, but a project focused on processes and connections. And a detailed look into this process will show that like we had 27 in-depth interviews with stakeholders across Alberta, as well as a couple interviews with the users. We then shared those findings in a focus group setting, facilitating the grounds for dialogues and connections. And later, following up that, to give the opportunity and chance for those who didn't have the chance to be engaged in our interview or focus group setting, we extended a survey. And through this survey, we had the chance to include people from those communities that they were not had the chance to share their voices in previous steps. And through all of these processes, we had connected with communities like Slave Lake, Medicine Hat, Dryden Valley, Peace River, Central Alberta, Ponoka, Innisfil, Grand Cache, Camrose, and Lamont. So the final piece of this project was an information sharing setting, which we had to postpone because of the COVID restrictions, believing that in-person gathering would have the most impact. And that was something postponed for later after March. And that's about the transportation initiative. And before I pass it to my colleague, Connor, I would just to say that if you want to reach out or if you have any questions for either transportation or immigration initiative, I will leave my email in the chat, and please feel free to reach out to me. And I would hand it to you, Connor.
Thank you, Elnas, and hello, everyone. My name is Connor Platten. I'm the project manager of the Agri-Foods Initiative, and thank you again for joining us today. So the Agri-Foods Initiative was launched in April of 2021, and our goal is to facilitate greater agricultural literacy and provide pathways to career opportunities in the agriculture and food sectors to enhance community economic development. Our primary project is the Farm Ed project, funded by the Canadian Agricultural Partnership and distributed by the Government of Alberta. FarmEd is an education-based project which aims to increase agricultural awareness and literacy through experiential learning at rural schools across Alberta. We're doing this by developing the FarmEd Toolkit, which is a guidebook that walks schools through the process of implementing small-scale school farms and agriculture education programs, which provides an outlet for experiential learning. Alongside the toolkit, we are implementing 2 pilot school farms and facilitating information sessions and professional development for educators. The project started in April of 2021 and will end in January of 2023. From the start of the project to May of 2022, we've engaged a number of stakeholders in education, agriculture, and policy, and with their knowledge, experience, and resources have drafted the toolkit. Between January and today, we've worked with 2 pilot schools, one being Urban School in Urban, Alberta, and the other is Picture Butte High School in Picture Butte, Alberta. These 2 schools are very different and are at different stages of implementation, but working alongside them has been such a great asset to the toolkit and project in general. As you can see on the slide, we're right at the end of phase 2, finalizing the toolkit and working towards formatting and publishing. And we have some professional development days in the works for October, which is when the toolkit will be released. So I just wanted to show the network that has formed around this project, and I feel fortunate that RDN is right in the middle, orchestrating these moving parts and meeting the people who are so passionate about food production and the importance of educating the next generation. Skip to the next slide. You can see here the list of organizations who have worked with me to put this project together, all connected through each other, and many of the relationships have led to adjacent project ideas and proposals in the agriculture education niche. So the goal for the future of FarmEd is to keep this snowball rolling and build on work-integrated learning and career opportunities in the agriculture and food sectors for students, as well as increasing inclusivity and overall increasing the school food network in Alberta and across Canada. So that is the swift version of the agri-food story. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me via email, which I will pop into the chat. And I'm always happy to start a conversation. So thank you again, and I'll turn it over to Deanne to tell you more about rural revitalization.
Thanks, Connor. The RDN has been working over the past couple of years to launch a new project, Rural Revitalization, in partnership with the Township of Hornpain in North Central Ontario, sorry. The impetus for this project was recognizing that communities, especially small communities, spend a lot of time and money and resources making plans, but as few as 1/3 of those plans are ever followed through with. And plans that sit on a shelf don't do anyone any good. So many communities focus on economic development, but if they aren't also focused on the social and environmental development of the community, progress can quickly stall, because economic prosperity attracts new investment in workers, and workers bring their families. These newcomers need access to services, including social services like healthcare, schools, employment services, and daycare, but also to private services like groceries, restaurants, shops, and personal services, all of which create new jobs and investment and attract more people. And of course, everyone wants and needs a safe, appropriate, and affordable place to live, which is the environment. All of these things need to be considered in order to create sustainable and successful community development. So RDN and the Township of Hornpain, after a lot of discussion, partnered to create a model of community revitalization. So we're working together to build and implement truly integrated municipal revitalization plans that will ensure the community grows in a cohesive, well-planned manner. Hornpain has generously agreed to allow RDN to share the learnings so we can create a step-by-step guide to rural revitalization for use by other small communities across Canada. We are currently seeking other communities from anywhere across Canada to join us in this initiative. So please, if you're interested in learning more, reach out to me. And now we're going to take another quick little question period. So please feel free to ask any questions on any of the things you've heard. You can either ask them out loud or put them in the chat box. So we'll just wait a minute to see if there are any questions. Otherwise, we'll keep moving along if there aren't any.
I have a question, if I may.
Go ahead.
Hi. So this is Nancy. And I don't know if it's a question so much as an observation and maybe looking for if this is a common experience or not. A number of the initiatives that you guys have rolled out are absolutely fantastic and very needed in smaller and particularly Indigenous communities. And I know from experience with the fee-for-service work that we did around the international student readiness, that you guys are able to help communities that are really struggling with just even getting their minds around some of these issues. And I'm just curious if that's a common experience. And I'll give an example. I've connected some of my contacts in Beaver Lake Cree Nation about the homelessness estimates and some of the toolkits and things like that. And I found that although your group was really helpful, on the other side, the community people just do not have the time to even follow up. So I'm wondering if that is a common experience and whether there's anything we can do about that to help people move along. Because I think there's just some fantastic tools and I'm wanting to make sure people use them. Thank you.
Yeah, unfortunately, that is a very common experience in many communities. People are wearing so many hats, it's really hard for them to move stuff forward. But, you know, we also find that if we, you know, quote unquote, do it for them, there isn't the same kind of buy-in, right? So it has to be driven by them and we help build capacity. So one of the ways we can do that is either by helping them do the work or helping to find some funding so they can hire someone to actually do the work. But yeah, unfortunately, and especially the smaller the community, the more likely that is to be a huge barrier.
Yeah, so following up on that line, because that's what I was thinking too, is getting somebody on their side with the capacity instead of asking a person that's already juggling 4,000 balls saying, here's another ball and we'll help you when you're ready to catch it. So anyway, it's just I guess more of an observation. So if there is a community that we think might be interested in that, is that, and it could be cross project kinds of ideas. Is that something that we should just make a connection to you, Deanne, or how do you think that should work?
Yeah, absolutely. Reach out. I mean, we can't guarantee that we can help, but Township of Hornpain is a great example. So they're a small, very rural, very remote community, under 1,000 people. They didn't have the capacity, but we worked with them to find funding. They put in funding themselves as well. And now we've hired a full-time position that's located in Hornpain and that works with RDN to actually execute the project. And that's our plan for other communities that would join the Rural Revitalization Initiative, is to have a full-time person in those communities working on them. So it's going to look different depending on the community and the project, but yeah, we really want to try to build capacity and not just heap more work on to the people who are already very busy.
Thank you so much.
Thanks. I'm wondering if there are any other questions. Maybe if anyone's monitoring the chat box, they can let me know. Otherwise, we'll move on to the next part.
I don't see anything, Deanne, so I think we can go ahead and move on.
Thank you. So we're going to switch gears a little bit, and I'm sure many people tuned into Queen Elizabeth's funeral service yesterday. As a tribute to the 70th anniversary of the late Queen's accession to the throne, the RDN was invited by the government of Alberta to select 5 nominees to receive the Queen's Platinum Jubilee Medal. So we are currently seeking nominations for the Platinum Jubilee Medal. The medal program recognizes outstanding service from Albertans who have dedicated themselves to family, community, and country. Nominees should be leaders in their communities, have made a significant impact on the local level and come from across Alberta. So we're really looking for some rural Albertans to be nominated. And if you're interested in nominating someone, please visit our website to fill out the nomination form, or if you're a newsletter subscriber, you can check out the link in our newsletter. And now I'd like to introduce 3 more staff teams and our 2 board teams. So first, please meet our operations team, which includes Sandra DeCesare, our Director of Finance, Lisa Belanger, our Director of Operations, and Sarah Sarita, our Operations Assistant. Sandra and Lisa are 2 of RDN's most senior staff members, and they ensure that the organization runs smoothly. Sarah helps ensure things run smoothly behind the scenes, as she is doing for this AGM. Second, please meet our communications team. The past fiscal year has seen big changes in the communications department. Holly joined RDN in 2021 and has worked diligently to create processes and procedures that have allowed the team to expand and integrate across the organization. We were able to bring Emily onto the team in 2022 through an internship, thanks to our Work Integrated Learning, or WIL program that Daniela told you about. Emily is a true WIL success story, and she will be remaining at RDN through the rest of her university education and then post-graduation. The comms team is continuing to grow. And third, late in the fiscal year, due to our incredible growth, we created the HR team. This busy team is led by Kelly Petroschek and assisted by Jessica Pena. And now it's my pleasure to introduce our executive board members who are instrumental in steering the RDN ship. I know Kevin introduced them earlier, but I don't think enough can be said about them. And of course, if you stay for the business meeting, you'll get to meet them personally. But they include our board chair, Kevin Shufflebotham, Nancy Broadbent, our treasurer and past chair, vice chairs Ed Pajor and Brandy Lee, and secretary Gilbert Paris. And last, but certainly not least, I am pleased to introduce our advisory board. These rural advocates from across Canada keep us informed about rural issues, introduce us to like-minded individuals and organizations, and support our work in many other ways. They are Kevin Van Lygen, Kimberly Worthington, Leslie Warren, Mark Boychuk, Mike Leithwood, Mitchell Rhodes, and Nancy Green. And with that, I want to thank you all for joining us. We appreciate your interest in our work and encourage you to reach out if you have any questions. And we're happy to take more questions now, have a discussion about whatever you're interested in. Otherwise, we're going to take a short break and then reconvene here at 11 o'clock for the business portion of our AGM, which everyone is welcome to attend. So feel free to ask questions now. Otherwise, we'll see you in about 20 minutes for the business portion.
We do have a question here, Deanne. So it's from Vaughn and says they would like to know how RDN manages and monitors cross-pollination between different initiatives.
Thanks, Vaughn. That is a challenge and one we continue to work to address, because I will say initially our initiatives were kind of working a bit in silos, with the cross-initiative work just being a bit random. But now we actually have people across initiatives working. So you've probably noticed that there were some faces that popped up under multiple areas. So it really helps to have people who work across those initiatives to help notice the opportunities. We have regular meetings across the senior leadership team and other management and staff levels. And we're really trying to work to figure out how that works together. And then that's a bit of how rural revitalization was born, because it kind of brings it all together and ties everything together. So it's still a bit of a work in progress. I think it always will be. And of course, we have our evaluations coordinator, Elaine, and some other people working on evaluations, trying to look at how the cross-pollination works. So that's probably not the most concise answer, but it's definitely one of our big goals, is to make sure that things really work across initiatives. Any other questions or anything anyone would just like to discuss?
See, we have a hand up from Jessica.
Hi, everybody. I just wanted to quickly say that I have dropped the link that takes us to our form to nominate anybody you think is deserving from the Queen's Medal program.
Thanks, Jessica. Well, I think we will let you all have a bit of a break before our business portion. I'd recommend you just turn your camera off and mute rather than trying to sign back in. Unless you're having issues, then I encourage you to sign back in. And we will see you for the business portion, which I promise you will be short and sweet at 11 if you're interested. Otherwise, thank you so much for joining us, and have a great rest of your day.